enjoyed it. Have a good night. I may not be as enthusiastic as I sometimes am because I spent the day digging a trench to bury some electric wire from out of the road back to the house. And I realized that it was hot out, but that wasn't the determining factor. I had a birthday a couple of weeks ago and it was a doozy.
Oops, I'm sorry.
I'd really like to have some fun and maybe get us to think a little bit instead of getting caught up in rhetoric. I would ask how many of you here are for drilling the Marcellus, even if it meant that we knew ahead of time it would degrade your local environment. How many of you would want to drill knowing that in advance? So you would drill even if it meant that you're going to destroy the groundwater and there wouldn't be any wildlife. How many of you wouldn't drill even if you knew that there would be no adverse impact? Anybody in the audience? I think those represent the two extremes, really. And I'd like to talk a little bit, have, like I said, some fun. I grew up here. I lived in West Davenport, went to school in Oneonta, was known not for my academic abilities, but my desire to fish and hunt. I was truant the day I was inducted into the National Honor Society. That's the truth. I was trout fishing with Louis Blazzetti, a very good friend from high school. And my mother dropped us off at these spring runs, and Louis caught a nice big brook trout. And then we met my mother, as we had said we would, and she took us into Oneonta, and she was a sucker for, pleading. So we begged her to take us back and let us fish, because we'd already caught one big one. So she did, but the only problem was she didn't call Louis's mother. And so when the school called Louis's mother and said, "Louis's not in school," what do you think happened? It wasn't pretty. I was fortunate enough to be your DEC commissioner. I worked very hard trying to bring some common sense to the agency, and I was very proud of a lot of the accomplishments and of the people that make up that agency. I'd like to ask a question. How many of you have dealt with DEC in one way or another? Did you find them to be underzealous in their job? No. Most of you would say that they were overzealous. And I was interested when I heard Senator Seward speak at a meeting in Oneonta, and he talked about how much confidence he had in DEC's ability to do the job. And that seemed in conflict with his proposed home rule bill. Because if indeed you have confidence in DEC's ability to do the job, why would you want to take away their ability to do their job? Which is what, in essence, home rule would do. So there wasn't a good answer to that question. I'd like us to think a little bit about agendas. Well, one of the things that I had a chance to do while I was in the seat of all wisdom and knowledge, which is, all of it, was to look at what was on people's minds. What was the real agenda? I had a group come in, and I'll tell you who it was. It was Peter. And they wanted me to change the name of the town Fishkill. I said, I'm endowed with certain powers, but that isn't one of them. But the interesting thing was, and I saw this so many times, and I'm seeing it in this issue, they didn't take the time to determine the origin of the word kill. It's a Dutch word and it means stream. So fish kill means stream with fish, not stream with dead fish. And I explained that and said, you know, I can't help you, but you ought to think about this. And they left, and when I left, they came back and tried it with the next commission. I had another group come in protesting a timber harvest on a state forest. The harvest was being done specifically to benefit wildlife. And they came in and wanted to meet in protest of that. And I did a little homework before I met with them, and I was sitting down in the office, and they said, you know, we're opposed to this, and we're going to fight it, we're going to go to the governor, which happened all the time. And I said, well, explain to me, help me understand. Aren't you building a log home compound in the Catskills? Yes, we are. But you don't want me to cut any trees. No, you don't. Is there a conflict there? This is the God's honest truth now. They said, no, we bought the trees from a vendor. I'm very seldom speechless, but that one did. So, with that kind of a background, I'd just like you to know a little bit about me. I have a doctorate in wildlife. I headed the National Audubon Society's legislative office in Washington for several years. I set up the first committee within the National Research Council, which is the scientific arm of the National Academy of Sciences, on renewable natural resources. I've testified before Congress 43 times, and I'm still sane, or some variant thereof. I only tell you that because I'd like you to trust me. And my dad told me a lot of things, but one of them that he was really, a stickler about is he said, your word is your bond. If you break it, it isn't good anymore. You can't fix it. So I've lived that way. In fact, I've passed on buying a house because my handshake wasn't good enough. They wanted to get 18 lawyers involved. I don't need them. I told you I'm going to do this. Think about what the debate is on this gas drilling. We're going to have, the sky is going to fall in. The earth is going to perish. Now let's take a little look at some things. Any of you know a guy named Ed Van Putt? Ed Van Putt is a fisheries biologist in Region 3 for DEC. He's a probably world-renowned trout fisherman, and he wrote a book about the beaver kill. Everybody here know where the beaver kill is, down in Roscoe? It's a world-class trout stream. How many of you know that at one time there was a world-class dump? The beaver kill was lined with acid plants. They took the hemlock off the mountains and made tannic acid for the canning industry. The acid got dumped in the river went down the toilet, and it wasn't a world-class stream. Why do I tell you that? Is that right that that happened? No, it's not right. A lot of things weren't right, but a lot of things were done out of ignorance. We wouldn't do that today. But the message behind that is, what did Mother Nature do when we stopped dumping acid in the stream? It rehabilitated, and now it's a world-class trout stream. Have any of you looked at aerial photographs of the Oneonta area from the 1930s? There weren't any trees. This is a third-generation forest. Yet, we all ooh and ah in fall when the leaves are changing color. Mother Nature did it again. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, about 100,000 dairy farms went out of business in New York, family dairy farms. The parents couldn't produce fast enough to have enough kids to work the farm to make it economical. And if you lived back then, you know I'm not kidding, because if you were on a dairy farm, you got a big family. What happened when those 100,000 dairy farms went out of business? About 10 million acres of farm-tilled land went fallow. What's that mean? It means we're not farming it anymore. What happens to an acre of land in this state if you stop managing it? If you stop mowing your lawn, if you stop mowing your hayfield, what happens? It will go through a series of steps from perennials to blackberries to raspberries to deep hazel to aspen to beech, birch, maple, and hemlock. In other words, it goes from grass to brush to trees. How do I know that? Anybody in the audience hunt deer in the 1960s? Anybody that's old enough? We got a few truth tellers here. What was the deer rifle that everybody had in the 1960s? A Winchester Model 94 30-30. What was it called? A brush gun. My goodness. Do we hunt with a brush gun today? Oh, we hunt with a Winchester 7mm short mag with a 3x9 scope on it. It isn't because our eyes are bad. It's because when you look through the woods, what do you see? No brush. There's an overstory with leaves in the summer that shades out everything underneath it, and so there's nothing to provide food or cover for wildlife. Believe it or not, there are 43 species of migratory songbirds that are in rapid decline right now because we're not harvesting enough of our hardwood forests. We're relying on Mother Nature, and she's not doing it at a rapid enough pace. Now, you go out west where we have all the wilderness and haven't been able to do any management, what's Mother Nature doing? She's burning it up. So, there's a message in there, and that is we need to manage, we need to steward. The impacts of natural gas, when we talk about impact, what's the thing that comes to our mind if I use the word impact? Negative. Doesn't impact mean bad? No, it doesn't. It could be good. And the Rough Grouse Society, of which I was president and CEO of until the 21st, which was yesterday, is working with several of the companies to show them how to minimize the bad impact and maximize the positive impact on wildlife. I've got a video that I made when I was the vice president for Transco Energy with Frosty Anderson, who was at the time vice president of sanctuaries for Audubon, talking about the pipeline we were building and how good it was going to be for wildlife because it created an open area and edge. Edge is very productive ecologically. So, are we getting any differences of opinion here from some of the things that we've heard? All impacts aren't bad. Sometimes they can be very good. The executive director of Pennsylvania Audubon called me wanting to partner with the Rough Grouse Society because our mission is to create young forest, brush. That's where you find grouse and woodcock. And if you've been hunting in someplace else, that's why you're not finding anything. He called up and said, we'd like to partner with you because we're interested in the golden-winged warbler. Well, the golden-winged warbler is in rapid decline. It could be listed as threatened or endangered. None of us want that, by the way, because as soon as that happens, if it's on your property, you got an issue. You don't have as many property rights as you had before. But they recognize that preservation alone isn't enough. Just buying land and saying we're going to preserve this isn't going to help you meet your objectives if you're interested in wildlife. You need to manage it. What the gas companies are doing is a form of management. That's not their intent. They're not deliberately managing for wildlife unless you go say to them, hey, I've got 300 and some acres, your pipeline's coming through here, if you're going to drill, I'd like you to help me do a couple things. And they will help you. They'll help you with your roads. They might build a farm pond for you. They've got all that heavy equipment right there. The incremental cost of using it to help you is very small. So that's another thing to think about. That's one of the things I used to do a lot of. So aerial photos, go look at it. Look on the back road to the Cooperstown Lake, the National Resource Conservation Service, which used to be SCS. And look at some aerial photographs of this area from the 30s and 40s and 50s. I think you have fun. You'd be surprised. How many of you walk your property and find stone walls? Did God put those there? Oh, some patient, rugged farmer put them there when he was probably plowing with oxen. And I don't know how they did it. Because I picked stone as a boy, and I got to tell you, it wasn't a lot of fun. My role here today is not to tell you what to do. I've been to some town meetings where people stand up and say, you know, you don't have any rights. You can't use your land for what you want to use it for, because we're going to tell you what you can do. That's not my mission. I'm not here tonight to say I'm for or against. What I would like us to do as a group of intelligent people, and all of you are, is to ask ourselves, how? How could the natural gas be developed in a way that does two things? Protects the quality of our environment and provides for economic activity. I had to leave Oneonta, find a job that I was interested in having, as did my sister. I don't want your kids to have to leave. They should have options. Why can't kids stay here? There's nothing wrong with a few leaving, but if you leave because you have to, that's a different issue. I don't know how to say this any other way, but there are some folks who are trying to affect your quality of life. And the environment, and environmental protection is not the real agenda. If it was the real agenda, what would you do if you were interested in protecting the environment against something? You look at the history. We just heard that there's between 10 and 13,000 wells in New York without an issue. There are hundreds of thousands, no, millions, I guess, of wells across the country. Where's the issue? And the thing that doesn't get said is that the environmental benefit is not just the environmental benefit, it's a health benefit. There's the potential to benefit hundreds of thousands of people in New York State by converting from coal to gas. If you have respiratory issues, gas is a clean fuel. Coal has particulates. That doesn't mean coal is evil. We have a lot of it. We need it to maintain our balance of energy. But if you produce enough gas so that you can burn gas in New York as a fuel, it's a affordable to burn as a fuel, not just, what do we usually use gas for? Cooking and heating your home. I worked for an electric generation company, and our CEO did not want to install gas-fired turbines to produce electricity. He just didn't want to do it. And I said, why? He said, because that's a premium fuel. I don't want to waste it because you get about a 40% efficiency when you convert gas to electricity. By the time you deal with the inefficiencies of the conversion and then line drop, he said, I just don't want to do that. And at the time, we didn't have the abundance of gas that we have now. Governor Pataki installed 4 gas-fired turbines around New York City. Why? Because if there was a power shortage, you could start them up quickly, which is one of the benefits of gas-fired turbines, and thereby avoid rolling blackouts. He didn't install them to burn on a regular basis to produce electricity. He used it for an emergency purpose. So, there's a lot going on here. I hope I'm not confusing anybody, but there's just a lot going on. So you look at the record and you look at the benefits. There's a benefit in terms of air quality, there's a benefit in terms of health, and there haven't been any adverse instances. We lost you. Am I losing? Am I back? Why are we, using the environment as a reason for being opposed to producing gas? It doesn't fly. I'm sorry. If it did, I'd tell you so, but I don't see it that way. Especially now that the companies are recycling their water and because they're publishing what's in the drilling fluids. And by the way, 99.3% of the frac fluid is water and sand. That means 0.7% is something that could be bad. Of that, a percentage is mineral oil. In some cases, some kind of dishwater. Mineral oil. Any of you ever used mineral oil when you were a kid? You mix it with iodine to do what? Get a suntan. So, I'm not saying we should dump millions of gallons of it, but I am saying that we need to put it in perspective. Biocides, we all use those in our home. Fungicides. I would venture to say that if we were going to point at somebody as being environmentally bad, we ought to look at ourselves before we start pointing and say, what are we dumping down our drain into the leach field? I find myself saying, whoa, especially in the spring, when you clean out everything from last year, you gotta be responsible as well as asking others to be responsible. A lot of the folks that are trying to affect your quality of life, if we really look at the time in life, many of them are retired, or some of them, at least one of them might be a foundation, and I would guess that their investments are pretty heavy in mutual funds that have energy stocks. Is there any inconsistency there? On a bigger picture, you know what's happened since the gas play in Texas and Pennsylvania to our energy balance? Prior to that, we were importing over 62% of our energy. Now it's down about to 45%. That's huge. Think about what that does in terms of our president's ability to look somebody in OPEC or some other country square in the eye and say, no, I'm not going to do that. Before, he had to say, if I say no, and they cut me off, what are we going to do back home? Now he can say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's very easy for all of us to be NIMBYs. It's okay to have gas development, I just don't want it in my backyard. But you know what? I don't know if that's fair. I looked at California for years, and they didn't want to do any drilling offshore, even though millions of gallons had seeped into the ocean. They are the most energy intensive per capita of any state, and yet they don't want any of the energy produced there. Well, wait a minute. Is that fair? And does it have to be bad? Should we be talking about energy in New York when we have the luxury of time? What do I mean by that? Right now, we've got energy. We're not threatened. And can any of you remember what happened when we were threatened? Any of you ever heard of Tennessee Gas Pipeline? Tennessee Gas Pipeline was built to provide energy for the war effort. How many environmental impact statements do you think were filed? 0. What would have happened if they had been filed? 0. Why? Because it was a national interest. We were at war. What I'm saying to you is, we don't want to wait until there is a crisis like that, because if we do, our ability to say, hey, we want this and that and this thing, we won't get it. The Alaska pipeline is a great example. When that pipeline was built, if you remember, it was, my God, this is the end of the world. We're going to destroy all of Alaska's wildlife. And yet it was done with deliberation, it was done right. And what happened as a result? It has been way cheaper to maintain than was originally anticipated because it was done right, but there haven't been any spills of significance. So it can be done. You, everybody in this room, has the ability to make it be done right. But if you don't participate, it won't happen. And I've been amazed at what I see when I go to meetings. And I just go and sit and observe and, try to be a fly on the wall. The folks that are participating in marching in Albany, by and large, aren't you. And there's reasons for that in many cases, because the people who aren't marching are running businesses and, they're busy. But you're up against folks who are religious about, no, we're not going to have this. And if they have more perceived numbers than you do, guess what happens? And by the way, please don't ever think that facts or science rule the day. In the world of public policy, perception is reality. If somebody perceives something to be bad, then they will take action based on that perception. It's up to us to help them understand that there are options. That things can be done in a positive way. It doesn't have to be bad. The other thing I'd like to say, and I had 3 pages and I'm not through page 1, and I'd like to have you have a chance to ask questions. But no company wants to pollute. Why? Okay, there's 2 good reasons. I only have 1. One is they got to go someplace else after they leave you. And if they've done a bad job with you, it's going to be even harder to go somewhere else. And the other reason is, even if they didn't care about the environment, and they do. I've been in the office of many CEOs in the energy business, and all of them have some form of wildlife art, carving, or something in their office. They're hunters, they're fishermen, they're birders. And yes, they've got a job to do, and that's produce energy. But why don't they want to pollute? It's expensive. Supposing you contaminate an aquifer, what's EPA going to make you do? You're going to have to provide that area with water, fresh water, every day until they can test that water and the pollutant is no longer above whatever the regulated standard is. That's expensive. And cleaning it up to that level can be ungodly expensive. So, no company wants to knowingly pollute. With that, what are we supposed to do? By the way, is that helpful at all?
All right, we're going to have a little bit of Q&A. We have some people here who have a lot of areas. Brad, would you mind coming up? Brad can tell you something about the politics going on right now. Earl Colley is here around. He's in the battle all the time.
Like the dog over here.
What's that?
Like the dog.
Okay, you want some up for a second? And Earl can tell you some of the problems that we meet in those town halls. And he's been in several of them. Susan Dorsey, is she around? Susan? And Rod. What's that? Okay, can you stay up here in case anybody wants to ask a question to you? Good, okay. All right, any questions? Kick it off. Anybody wants to ask a question? Question over here. In Albany, I don't know. Locally, oh, okay. This is an informative evening. Do the people in Albany get this kind of information? That was the question, essentially? All right. All right.
Dick. And I want to talk to Kim.
The answer is they do. I know there's been an effort to reach them. I think one of them was very surprised if we had Valorum numbers. And the industry has people who, on a daily basis, are trying to affect policy. But in reality, not enough. How many marches have there been by the folks opposed to Marcellus drilling in the last year? They're up in Albany all the time. If their assemblyman or senator shows any sign of being supported, they just descend on them in their local district offices in Albany. The media jumps on it. So I guess what I'm saying is, if it's worth eating a steak, sometimes you got to be willing to light the fire on the grill. Because if you don't, you're either going to not eat the steak, or it's really going to be bleeding. I can't say it any other way. It's a political process. As I said to you, the science does not necessarily rule the day.
Hello, I'd just like to say also, we have delivered both the ad valorem presentation to many of the legislators in Albany. Susan Dorsey and myself went at one point and presented to several of the legislators, and I was quite amazed, Senator Seward being one of them, that when I met with him, he really did not have any idea what the ad valorem tax would mean. And I happen to have the figures at that point for Worcester, and the fact that if you drilled 14 wells in Worcester, Senator Seward's daughter is a first-grade teacher in Worcester. Everybody knows the schools are looking to cut jobs. His daughter being a teacher and educator, and I know this from personal knowledge of his family and his daughter, I brought this up and I went through the presentation with the ad valorem tax, and I explained to him that if there were 14 wells drilled, at this point, if we're looking at 28 acres in 28,000 acres of the Worcester Township, that those 14 wells would completely eliminate the property taxes for that township. Wow. When you look at that, you have to say, this is what needs to be brought out to these legislators. He had no idea. And I actually got a wow out of Senator Seward, which the woman that I was with said, that's never happened. I've never seen a legislator respond that way to anybody's presentation. Well, we did get the wow on the ad valorem presentation. And also, just to let you know, last week, Rachel Colley and myself delivered over 200 Truthland videos to every single legislator in Albany. So if you get the opportunity, please call the legislators. I'm going to start this next week. Just call them and say, I've been told that you received a copy of the Truthland video, and I just like your response to what the truth is and what this is about, and what is your response to the faucets that are set on fire and the fact that it's not because of drilling. Thank you.
Question in the back, please be loud.
I have 6 pieces of property. They're all one right next to the other. Is it better to keep it like that? Does that give me 6 votes? Or to combine it? It comes to costing over 50 acres.
Which
She
might,
has 6 pieces of property, all right next to each other. My question is, she should combine them, or she should leave it as is?
there we go. There we have an answer.
That's going to be an answer. That's going to depend. Somebody else on the other side of the room could be in the same situation. They're going to have a different answer than what you're going to have. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to wait and see what the circumstances bring to you, whether a company wants to come in and lease all of them at once, or whether they want to lease a portion of them. You're really going to have to work with your local coalition and with your attorney to decide what is right at the time when it comes time to do something.
That's what I meant. Do I have a vote per lot? A
Vic?
vote per lot. In other words, 6 votes rather than 1.
What's
We combine the property. At this point, it was development. Okay, I'm on Martinsville Road,
She wants to know, she has 6 pieces of property. If she combines them to 1, would she get 1 vote? If she left them at 6, would she get 6 different
What do
votes?
you mean by a vote?
taking a stand for the coalition.
Okay, all right, I think I understand. Really, no, the number of properties is really not significant. In some of the work that CNY Coalition has been doing, they've been showing the amount of acreage, and that is important. So whether you have 60 acres divided among 10-acre parcels or 60 acres in one parcel, it's probably not going to make a great difference. Does that agree with what the efforts that you've been doing, Brian? Yeah. So probably there's no advantage to combining or separating or doing anything, so. All right? Oh, Wayne.
We own 95 acres. We bought it in 3 parcels. This is not a gas-related answer. We went to our town assessor, we spoke with our town assessor, and his recommendation, because 2 of the parcels were small parcels, was to incorporate it into a large parcel, and this way we could be taxed on abandoned agriculture instead of having 3 building lots. And our taxes will reduce substantially because of that. That's not on the gas issue, that's just dollars and cents before gas came into it.
I have one more question, because I see everyone's beginning to get a little bit antsy, and I want to honor our Jen Huntington. So one question on the aisle.
I called Senator Seward's office last year. I live on Long Island. I'm a Republican committee. And I talked to the office, very nice lady. I explained the situation. How can we get $2 billion in countries like Brazil? Let George Soros drill there and sell them to China. The fact of how DuPont.org, Green Party, Ford Foundation, all funded by this guy, how can you sit there and go on the other side with all these left-wing liberals that are trying to bankrupt this country and not let this country prosper to take our animals? To me, to call this man, he should have called me back maybe. The bottom line is, I don't think he cares about our side. He's only caring about the votes, whoever he gets his hand in front of him.
I guess there's no answer here to the question.
There is one possible response to that. Make him hear your voices so he realizes that the vote is with you. Get in touch with him. Make his phone ring until he's sick of it. Let him hear from you. But do it politely and respectfully so that he can understand that we're reasonable and rational people.
And there is another candidate on the Republican primary. I think he's been speaking to people as they come in. You might meet Jim Blake. He's the outside, I'm sure, and chat with him. Now, one of the best things in this long, frustrating 4-year fight is that I've met so many interesting people who have been on our side, have been trying to move this forward. And I had the great pleasure last year of meeting Jen Huntington. She came to one of our meetings and introduced herself. I've been over to her farm several times. This is a straight ahead, straight forward, straight shooting lady. Tremendous courage, has taken a lot of hits from all of us. I've been to meetings where she has been vilified, has been put down, and she meets it with dignity. I'm going to hand the microphone over to you. Yes?
As usual, Mr. Downing takes away my thunder. He took the beginning of my introduction. Anyway, Jen, where are you? Please come up. And acknowledge her. She's a terrific woman. You know very little about her. About a month ago, jump back, please, so I'm still here. About a month ago, Rich Downey and I and several of our steering committee members, really, it sank into our head that this courageous woman was doing something that could help every one of us throughout the state, and especially in Otsego County, where People are saying, what's going on in your county? What kind of weirdos do you have living there? You're talking about what Mr. Zagata spoke about, the NIMBYs, the antis. I want the results, but I don't want to pay for them with my property or whatever the heck it is. Okay, and so we came up with a decision. She is faced for anywhere up to $150,000 and maybe more in expenses. Even though, if you read today's Daily Star, and I gather that some of the other papers also carry the article, there are some people that are contributing pro bono. It's very costly to have this kind of lawsuit. And you all were saying, she's not going to make it. So she's gone through 2 phases of it, and she's now preparing to go on to the 3rd phase. And with our spirit, our knowledge, when we speak to someone who's anti, and they try to tell you, as one of my neighbors just told me tonight, you're gonna lose, you're just wasting your money. If we stick together, we will make it. So the Unity Area Landowners Association decided that we would promise to raise at least $5,000 to help her effort. We have a wee bit more, thank God. I was worried this afternoon. I have to tell you one other story. I was just coming out of the tub this afternoon because I was out gabbing with somebody. And I was hot as you know what. And buck naked and here banging on the door. This is the other end of the house. And I thought it was my buddy. Where is he? Hiding. To tell me, Anna, I ran out of Scotch tape. We've got to bring it. We're going to need to tape things up tonight. So I ran and I went into the closet and got my heavy winter bathrobe. Put that on, wrapped myself up, and came to the door. And instead, I saw a man with a worn-out hat, twisted backwards, a shirt that was pretty well worn. And I looked at him and I said, "Can I help you?" And he put his hand out and said, "No." He said, "I wanted you to have this check before tonight." He's a farmer in Otsego, and he chatted with me, and he is so loving of your action. I'll tell you his name sometime. I told him, I said, "I'd like to shake your hand," and he extended his hand, and then I said, "And if I need that, I'll give you a kiss." And he said, "Oh." But anyway, he handed over more than $200 to the farmer. This means a lot to me. So Jen, you made it. Good luck, our prayers are with you.
Thank you. And I said from the beginning, this battle is not for me. I'm just representing all of you folks out there, and I've told many people that I may be the person up on the podium, but I represent all of you. And I know I've talked with many folks that wish they could do something for their town that passed a ban and they want to do something. This is the something. There is only one game in town. This is it, and we need to rally behind this, and we will prevail. I think that we get up higher, different people hear the comments, but truly, as a farmer, you folks are my friends. This is my kind of people, and this is who I represent. So, glad to.
Look, I want to thank you all. I want to thank Mike Zagata. We didn't even get to talk, but thank you all for coming. It's been a hot night. I know that you all have to get home. You're going to maybe pop a cool one or whatever. Anyway, thank you for coming. I hope that we can do it again, Brian, right? Maybe we can do this in the fall. We'll have